Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, continuing the readings along the theme from the teaching of and to Anuruddha on the 8 qualities of a great being. And we're on the one that's translated as, "This Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company." And I looked up the Pali, and the words are not real commonly familiar to me. It's, I was expecting it to be viveka, which is what we often translate as seclusion, and it might be some sort of derivative, but the word is pavivitasayang dhammo. This Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude or delights in solitude. Nayang dhammo sanghanikara massa. So there you go, for those of you who are interested in the Pali. And then he expands on it a little bit further in the sutta. And let's see. When it was said, "This Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company," with reference to what was this said. Here, when a bhikkhu resorts to solitude, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, male lay followers, female lay followers, kings, royal ministers, heads of other sects, and disciples belonging to other sects approach him. In each case, with a mind that slants, slopes, and inclines to seclusion, withdrawn, delighting in renunciation, he gives them a talk, invariably concerned with dismissing them. When it was said, "This Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company," it is with reference to this that this was said. So I'm going to start it with a couple of readings. One is a selection from the Sutta Nipata, and it's from the first section, number 3, and Ajahn Jeff has titled it "A Rhinoceros." And he goes into a fairly lengthy explanation, which I won't read, about the translation from the Pali. The text literally says, "Wander alone like a sword horn," which is the Pali term for rhinoceros. So most other translators translate it as rhinoceros horn rather than rhinoceros. But Ajahn Jeff makes the point that it actually seems to make more sense when he just uses the word rhinoceros rather than rhinoceros horn, because it's the refrain that comes through every single verse is "wander alone like a rhinoceros," and "wander alone like a rhinoceros horn" doesn't read so well. It's hard to imagine a rhinoceros horn wandering alone. So anyway, that's the raging controversy for this sutta. Renouncing violence for all living beings, harming not even one of them. You would not wish for offspring, so how a companion? Wander alone like a rhinoceros. For a person by nature entangled, there are affections. On the heels of affection, this pain. Seeing the drawback born of affection, wander alone like a rhinoceros. One whose mind is enmeshed in sympathy for friends and companions neglects the goal. Seeing this danger in intimacy, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Like spreading bamboo entwined is concern for offspring and spouses. like a bamboo sprout, unentangling, wander alone like a rhinoceros. As a deer in the wilds, unfettered, go for forage wherever it wants. The observant person, valuing freedom, wanders alone like a rhinoceros. In the midst of companions, when staying at home, when going out wandering, you are prey to requests. Valuing the freedom that no one else covets, wander alone like a rhinoceros. There is sporting and love in the midst of companions, and abundant love for offspring. Feeling disgust at the prospect of parting from those who'd be dear, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Without resistance in all four directions, content with whatever you get, enduring troubles without panic, wander alone like a rhinoceros. They are hard to please, some of those gone forth, as well as those living the household life. Being unconcerned with the offspring of others, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Cutting off the householder's marks, like a Khaggavisana tree that has shed its leaves. The enlightened one, cutting all household ties, wanders alone like a rhinoceros. If you gain an astute companion, a fellow traveler, right living, enlightened, overcoming all troubles, go with him, gratified, mindful. If you don't gain an astute companion, a fellow traveler, right living, and wise, wander alone like a king renouncing his kingdom, like the elephant in the Matanga wilds, his herd. We praise companionship, yes. Those on a par, or better, should be chosen as friends. If they're not to be found, living faultlessly, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Seeing radiant bracelets of gold, well made by a smith, clinking, clashing, two on an arm, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Thinking, in the same way, if I were to live with another, there would be conversation or attachment. Seeing this future danger, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Because sensual pleasures, elegant, honeyed, and charming, bewitch the mind with their manifold forms, seeing this drawback in sensual strings, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Calamity, tumor, misfortune, disease, an arrow, a danger for me. Seeing this danger in sensual strings, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Cold and heat, hunger and thirst, wind and sun, horseflies and snakes. Enduring all of these without exception, wander alone like a rhinoceros. As a great white elephant with massive shoulders, renouncing his herd, lives in the wilds wherever he wants, wander alone like a rhinoceros. There's no way that one delighting in company can touch even momentary release. Heeding the words of the kinsman of the sun, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Transcending the contortion of views, the sure way attained, the path gained. Realizing, unled by others, I have knowledge arisen, wander alone like a rhinoceros. With no greed, no deceit, no thirst, no hypocrisy, delusion and blemishes blown away. With no inclinations for all the world, every world, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Avoid the evil companion disregarding the goal, intent on the discordant way. Don't associate yourself with someone heedless and hankering. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Consort with one who is learned, who maintains the Dhamma, a great and quick-witted friend. Knowing the meanings, subdue your perplexity, then wander alone like a rhinoceros. Free from longing, finding no pleasure in the world's sport, ardor, or sensual bliss, abstaining from adornment, speaking the truth, wander alone like a rhinoceros. Abandoning offspring, spouse, father, mother, riches, grain, relatives, and sensual pleasures altogether, wander alone like a rhinoceros. This is a bondage There's little happiness here, next to no enjoyment, all the more suffering and pain. This is a boil. Knowing this, circumspect. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Shattering fetters, like a fish in the water tearing a net. Like a fire not coming back to what's burnt. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Eyes downcast, not footloose. Senses guarded, with protected mind. Not soggy, not burning. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Taking off the householder's marks like a coral tree that has shed its leaves. Going forth in the ochre robe. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Showing no greed for flavors, not wanton, going from house to house for alms with mind unenmeshed in this family or that. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Abandoning barriers to awareness, expelling all defilements, all, non-dependent, cutting aversion, affection. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Turning your back on pleasure and pain, as earlier with sorrow and joy. Attaining pure equanimity, tranquility. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. With persistence aroused for the highest goal's attainment, with mind unsmeared, not lazy in action, firm in effort, with steadfast and strength arisen. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Not neglecting seclusion, jhana, constantly living the Dhamma in line with the Dhamma, comprehending the danger in states of becoming. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Intent on the ending of craving and heedful, neither drooling nor dumb, but learned, mindful, having reckoned the Dhamma, certain and striving. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Unstartled, like a lion at sounds, unsnared, like the wind in a net, unsmeared like a lotus in water. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Like a lion, forceful, strong in fang, living as a conqueror, the king of beasts, resort to a solitary dwelling. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. At the right time, consorting with the release through goodwill, compassion, empathetic joy, equanimity, unobstructed by all the world, any world. Wander alone like a rhinoceros. Having let go of passion, aversion, delusion, having shattered the fetters, unfazed at the ending of life, wander alone like a rhinoceros. People follow and associate for a motive. Friends without a motive these days are rare. They're shrewd for their own ends and impure, wander alone like a rhinoceros. So, beautiful verses on the beauty of solitude, and I think he also made it clear that it doesn't mean that you don't have any spiritual companions or any people that you associate with, but keeping in mind that those who you want to be with and spend time with are those that can help you along the way on the path and not distract you from that. I also like the line about the consort, to consort. If you have a consort in a way, having your consort being the four Brahma Viharas, that's your to consort with those four states of mind. So the other reading I have is a reading I kind of stumbled across when I was looking around for stuff on this topic. And it's from Ayya Khema, 1994, from a book of hers called All of Us, and then in parentheses, subtitle, Beset by Birth, Decay, and Death. And this chapter, chapter 8, is entitled Ideal Solitude. In the Sutta Nipata, we find a course by the Buddha entitled The Rhinoceros Horn, which we just read, in which he compares the one horn of the rhinoceros with the sage's solitude. The Buddha praises being alone, and the refrain to every stanza of the sutta is, "One should wander solitary as a rhinoceros horn." There are two kinds of solitude, that of the mind, citta viveka, and that of the body, kaya viveka. I'll just insert there that we often hear about three kinds of solitude: citta viveka, kaya viveka, and then upadhi viveka, seclusion from the underlying constituents for existence is one way of translating upadhi. And there's going to be more on that, I think, tomorrow. Everyone is familiar with solitude of the body. We go away and sit by ourselves in a room or cave or tell the people we are living with that we want to be left alone. People usually like that sort of solitude for short periods. If this aloneness is maintained, it is often due to people not being able to get along with others or being afraid of them because there isn't enough love in their own hearts. Often there may be a feeling of loneliness, which is detrimental to solitude. Loneliness is a negative state of mind in which one feels bereft of companionship. When one lives in a family or community, it is sometimes difficult to find physical solitude. It's not even very practical. But physical solitude is not the only kind of aloneness there is. Mental solitude is an important factor for practice. Unless one is able to arouse mental solitude in oneself, one will not be able to be introspective, to find out what changes in oneself are necessary. Mental solitude means first and foremost not to be dependent on others for approval, for companionable talk, for a relationship. It doesn't mean that one becomes unfriendly towards others, just that one is mentally independent. If another person is kind to us, well and good. If that isn't the case, that's fine too, and makes no difference. The horn of a rhinoceros is straight and solid and so strong that we can't bend it. Can our minds be like that? Mental solitude cuts out idle chatter, which is detrimental to spiritual growth. Talking about nothing at all, just letting off steam. When we let the steam go from a pot, we can't cook the food. Our practice can be likened to putting the heat on oneself. If we let off steam again and again, that inner process is stopped. It's much better to let the steam accumulate and find out what is cooking. That is the most important work we can do. Everyone should have occasion each day to be on one's own physically for some time, so that we can really feel alone, totally by ourselves. Sometimes we may think, people are talking about me. That doesn't matter. We are the owners of our own karma. If somebody talks about us, it's their karma. If we get upset, that's our karma. Getting interested in what is being said is enough to show that we are dependent on people's approval. Who's approving of whom? Maybe the 5 khandhas, body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, are approving. Or possibly the hair of the head, the hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin. Which self is approving? The good one, the bad one, the mediocre one, or maybe the non-self? Unless one can find a feeling of solidity in oneself from the center, where there is no movement, one is always going to feel insecure. Nobody can be liked by everyone, not even the Buddha. Because we have defilements, we are always on the lookout for everybody else's pollutions. None of that matters. It's all totally unimportant. The only thing that is significant is to be mindful, totally attentive to each step on the way, to what one is doing, feeling, thinking. It's so easy to forget this. There's always somebody with whom to talk or another cup of tea to be had. That's how the world lives, and the inhabitants are mostly unhappy. But the Buddha's path leads out of the world to independent happiness. Letting off steam, idle chatter, and looking for companionship are the wrong things to do. Trying to find out what people are thinking about one is immaterial and irrelevant and has nothing to do with the spiritual path. Solitude in the mind means that one can be alone in the midst of the crowd. Even in a large and agitated crowd of people, one would still be able to operate from one's own center, giving out love and compassion, and not being influenced by what is happening around one. That can be called ideal solitude and means one has removed oneself from the future and past, which is necessary in order to stand straight and alone. If one is attached to the future, then there is worry, and if one is hankering for the past, there is either desire or rejection. That is the constant chatter of the mind, not conducive to mental solitude. Solitude can only be fully experienced when there is inner peace. Otherwise, loneliness pushes one to try and remedy a feeling of emptiness and loss. Where is everybody? What can I do without some companionship? I must discuss my problems. Mindfulness is able to take care of all that because it has to arise in the present moment and has nothing to do with future and past. It keeps one totally occupied and saves one from making mistakes, which are natural to human beings. But the greater the mindfulness, the fewer mistakes. Errors on the mundane level also have repercussions on the supermundane path because they are due to a lack of mindfulness, which will not allow us to get past our self-inflicted dukkha. We will try again and again to find someone who is to blame or someone who can distract us. Ideal solitude arises when a person can be alone or with others and remain of one piece, not getting caught in someone else's difficulties. We may respond in an appropriate manner, but we are not affected. We all have our own inner life, and we only get to know it well when the mind stops chattering and we can attend to our inner feelings. Once we have seen what is happening inside of us, we will want to change it. Only the fully enlightened one, Arahant, has an inner life which needs no changing. Our inner stress and lack of peace push us outward to find someone who will remove a moment of dukkha, but only we ourselves can do it. Solitude may be physical, but that's not its main function. The solitary mind is one which can have profound and original thoughts. A dependent mind thinks in cliches, the way everybody else does, because it wants approval. Such a mind understands on a surface level, just like the world does, and cannot grasp the profundity and depth of the Buddhist teaching. The solitary mind is at ease because it is unaffected. It's interesting that a mind at ease, which can stand on its own, also can memorize. Because such a mind is not filled with a desire to remove dukkha, it can remember without much trouble. This is one of its side benefits. The main value of a solitary mind is its imperturbability. It can't be shaken and will stand without support, just as a strong tree doesn't need a prop. Because it's powerful in its own right. If the mind doesn't have enough vigor to stand on its own, it won't have the strength and determination to fulfill the Dhamma. Our practice includes being on our own sometime each day to introspect and contemplate. Reading, talking, and listening are all communication with others, which are necessary at times. But it is essential to have time for self-inquiry. What is happening within me? What am I feeling? Is it wholesome or not? Am I perfectly contented on my own? How much self-concern is there? Is the Dhamma my guide, or am I bewildered? If there's a fog in one's mind, all we need is a searchlight to penetrate it. The searchlight is concentration. Health, wealth, and youth do not mean no dukkha. They are a cover-up. Ill health, poverty, and old age make it easier to realize the unsatisfactoriness of our existence. When we are alone, that is the time to get to know ourselves. We can investigate the meaning of the Dhamma we've heard and whether we can actualize it in our own lives. We can use those aspects of the Dhamma which are most meaningful for us. The solitary mind is a strong mind because it knows how to stand still. That doesn't mean not associating with people at all. That would lack loving kindness, metta. A solitary mind is able to stand alone and introspect, and also be loving towards others. Living in a Dhamma community is an ideal place to practice this. Meditation is the means for concentration, which is the tool to break through the fog enveloping everyone who is not an arahant. At times, in communal living, there is togetherness and lovingness and service. These should be the results of metta, not of trying to get away from dukkha. Next time we start a conversation, let's first investigate. Why am I having this discussion? Is it necessary? Or am I bored and want to get away from my problems? Clear comprehension is the mental factor which joins with mindfulness to give purpose and direction. We examine whether our speech and actions are having the right purpose, whether we are using skillful means, and whether the initial purpose has been accomplished. If we have no clear-cut direction, idle chatter results. Even in meditation, the mind does it, which is due to lack of training. When we practice clear comprehension, we need to stop a moment and examine the whole situation before plunging in. This may become one of our skillful habits, not often found in the world. An important aspect of the Buddha's teaching is the combination of clear comprehension with mindfulness. The Buddha often recommends them as the way out of all sorrow, and we need to practice them in our small, everyday efforts. These may consist of learning something new, a Dhamma sentence remembered, even one line of chanting memorized, one new insight about oneself, one aspect of reality realized. Such a mind gains strength and self-confidence. Renunciation is the greatest help in gaining self-confidence. One knows one can get along without practically everything, for instance, food, for quite some time. Once the Buddha went to a village where nobody had any faith in him. He received no alms food at all. Nobody in the village paid any attention to him. He went to the outskirts and sat down on a bit of straw and meditated. Another ascetic came by who had seen that the Buddha had not received any food and commiserated with him. "You must be feeling very badly not having anything to eat. I'm very sorry. You don't even have a nice place to sleep, just straw." The Buddha replied, "Feeders on joy we are. Inner joy can feed us for many days." One can get along without many things when they are voluntarily given up. If someone takes our belongings, we resist, which is dukkha. But when we practice self-denial, we gain strength and enable the mind to stand on its own. Self-confidence arises and creates a really strong backbone. Renunciation of companionship shows us whether we are self-sufficient. The Buddha did not advocate exaggerated and harmful ascetic practices, but we could give up, for instance, afternoon conversations and contemplate instead. Afterwards, the mind feels contented with its own efforts. The more effort one can make, the more satisfaction arises. We need a solitary mind in meditation, so we need to practice it sometime during each day. The secluded mind has two attributes. One is mindfulness, full attention, and clear comprehension, and the other is introspection and contemplation. Both of them bring the mind to unification. Only in togetherness lies strength. Unification brings power.
It's way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, me neither. I was very pleasantly surprised and
really
encouraged. Yeah. Quite spot on. Any other questions or thoughts, comments?
In the long course of Jito, speaking to that sutta, and just how it's taken and held like so wrongly by so many early monastics, and it's true, and it's a beautiful sutta. But he was saying how, like in the Buddha's time, there was this really well-established and tightly woven social fabric, and the Buddha, really did have to kind of work to kind of bring people out of that. But in our disjointed society, Long Course of Jito was saying how a lot of the work is actually because we don't have any fabric that holds us, actually building it, and that's so much of the work at the beginning of this path. And I certainly think it's why the Ajahn Sangha is so successful, is because there's such stress on that. And in Thailand, like, you see people try to pursue that ideal early on of just seclusion and stuff, and it really goes badly almost 100% of the time. But then, I think there's a place for Khaggavisana as well. But like Ajahn Karunadhammo says, maybe, usually doesn't recommend that for people for 4 or 5 classes or something after they've gotten that basis in community. I don't know what your thoughts are, Ajahn.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I think my thoughts are very much in line with that because obviously I read the sutta and then I read the Ayya Khema's comments on it as well to balance it out a bit. Yeah, I mean I think totally that, I mean, and it was like the Meghiya Sutta from the Udana that I talked about some weeks or months ago. I can't remember how long ago it was that brought that up. That, Meghiya going into the forest to practice in solitude against the Buddha's advice, and then kind of, not doing very well with it, being beset by a lot of unskillful thoughts, and coming back to the Buddha, and the Buddha essentially saying, "I told you so." Too soon, not ripe, not ready. So yeah, one has to find that balance, and for sure, my feeling too, just particularly in the West, particularly in America, we don't know how to be with each other, and we don't know how to learn from being with each other. So that's why we have this, why we're doing this, and it's also good to have that solitude and to appreciate that solitude. I mean, that's also what we're here for, to try and find that balance. We've got this beautiful forest and the opportunity, and I think as Ayya Khema just really quite lovely says, the solitude of the mind, the citta viveka, is in this kind of a setting is something that we have to really nourish. And the kaya viveka, getting out into the forest, getting away from the central area at the appropriate time, after the work is done, the cleanup is done, the meal has been taken, then the communal aspects have done their bit, and we've had to kind of work with all the communal energies, and we need that time to just be on our own, to watch the interior workings, to get to know the inside, to let the mind settle, and to learn from that, because it can be very easy to kind of take so much delight in the companionship that it can be a distraction. So that, I think Lumpur Pasano's intention in what has been rightfully and very well fulfilled is to find that balance of those qualities. So that we can enjoy the benefits of seclusion and learn from the being in community.
Ayya Khema, is that a Dharma teacher I'm not familiar with?
She was a nun. She passed away, about 10, 15 years ago? I'm not quite sure how long ago it was that she passed away. She was, a bhikkhuni I guess she was ordained in Sri Lanka. And she was the leader of a very vibrant community in the south part of Sri Lanka, on an island in a lagoon near the island hermitage, which was another monastery in Sri Lanka. But she had a number of disciples, and she was German, and then a community that survived her, a few monastics, larger lay community, and I'm not sure actually what their status is these days.
What's the name of her community? What's the name of it? All I remember is
Buddha Dam. There's a temple at the Wise Man Ferry in Australia, close to Sydney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the one that she has a piece of land, very beautiful. And she runs it with Ajahn named Kantipalo. Yeah, that was my first retreat.
In Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, but her main community in the monastery was the one in Sri Lanka. Yeah. I'm sure she had several centers around. Yeah. I met a monk who was a disciple of hers some years ago when I was at Bhavana Society, not too long after she had passed away. And they were kind of trying to keep a monastic community going in Germany, a small one. I think there were only 2 or 3 monastics at the time.
She also raised little ponies. She was a lay woman.
She raised little ponies?
Little ponies, yeah. Whatever they're called, miniature ones.
Shetland pony?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Her autobiography is I Give You My Life, which is, you could almost make it into a movie, because she did so many things before she ordained. It was quite a life.
I was just thinking too about how a couple, like from the Rhinoceros Sutta as well as Ayya Khema mentioning that there can be so many motivations for one seeking friendship, and also that in a social situation, like a group of friends could have a lot of motivations working at cross purposes, or there can be very complex relationships going on and so forth. And what I found as a monastic is that it's also like the amount of time I spend with people, but also like the health of my social relationships and the quality of those relationships has really taught me a lot about how to, like, when a monastic, I live with for a while and really get to know well, but then they go and leave and go to another monastery or something like that, and how I found that the healthier the relationship is, the freer those associations can be in the sense of people can leave or do other things, and it's not so codependent or it's not so clingy.
Right.
And those are the relationships that I found that help to build, into solitude. It's like they help me to develop a stronger sense of contentment and the stability on the inside. And so I really appreciate that about basically the quality of friendships that I've had with lay people and with monastics being associated with our communities in this tradition.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, sort of like the basis of relationships being metta and karuna rather than affection and attachment. Yeah. Codependence, as you say. To use an overused word, but it's quite apt. Yeah, and it's really along those same lines. It's just really wonderful how you can develop those kinds of friendships. And I find this is true, for myself, with other monastics or devoted lay practitioners, and not see them for years. And then all of a sudden, you see them again somewhere, and it's just like, no time has passed. The quality of the friendship is still the same because it was based on just really pure inner workings rather than just surface kinds of things. Yeah. So it's like it's just like yesterday.